I don't think you're getting any of that, so I will not play any more of those highlights and that sound. I don't think it's working for some reason, which defies logic. Why? I'll have to. Oh, I know why. Gosh darn it, I'm an idiot. That's why. Right here is why. I haven't fed it back to the computer. Whoa! Whoa! Bad noises. Terrible things happening. Let's try it again. It might work now. No, it won't work now.
Cross court to Hayward. He penetrates the baseline into lane. Jump stop. Kick back to Exum. 4 on the shot clock. Spins in the lane. Back to Hayward. 3-ball left side. Bang! Russian tied up at 91. Play with the pass, my friends. Play with the pass.
Now it worked. It kind of worked. There's other things that are supposed to be working better. Like there's now supposed to be another sound, another piece, another that, another this. But none of it ever works like it's supposed to. How are you? I'm the guy in black. The camera can't find me because there's this really bright, beautiful view behind me, which I'm going to give you for the rest of the day. It's my view of a brick wall. That's my Minneapolis, Indiana. Hope you're well. It's tip-off. I'm David Locke. I am the radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA Insider. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. We've got an NBA 5 for you, plus we'll run down the Jazz win last night against the Detroit Pistons as the Jazz get a nice little road win to start this thing off. Awfully cool to see that. So that's how we do things. Thanks to everybody who was involved with our Hoops for Troops events before we left on the trip. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be a part of those things, and the organization does a great job with that. I think we'll probably do a little bit more of that. Remember, Tuesday is Veterans Day. Jazz and the Pacers coming your direction tonight. And the Pacers are 1-6 and may not have Roy Hibbert, it sounds like, and don't have David West and don't have Paul George, and Lance Stevenson is left, so they are really seriously depleted. All right, with all of that said, let's hit our NBA 5. Pow! Oh, I forgot the drum roll, too. Gosh, what a disastrous day on the road. NBA 5, some interesting games last night in the NBA news around the NBA. The most interesting story is poor Kawhi Leonard is having a problem with vision issues right now. He's shooting just 31%, averaging 9 points a game. He had pink eye that kept him out of all the preseason. And now he has ended up with a virus that is blurring his vision and causing him a great deal of distress. Doctor told him it could be up to months before he ends up with that being straightened out. So that's a huge story for San Antonio, but also just sad in the NBA to be going through something like that. So we'll keep an eye on that story. Interesting game last night between Brooklyn and Orlando. Yesterday, Vukovic was killing Brook Lopez, and then Lionel Hollins went to Kevin Garnett as the center went small, which is the same way that Jason Kidd won a year ago, and they came back to win it. Charlotte, who I've told you all year is going to have problems, has problems, ladies and gentlemen, last night to the Lakers. And it's not they lost to the Lakers. Obviously, losing the Lakers is not good because the Lakers are terrible. It's more the fact of the matter that they end up at this point scoring 92 points in a loss to the Lakers. When I've said it before, you just can't load your team up with inefficient players and decide. There's something to the modern metrics that are going on. And when you do things like that, you end up with a terrible offensive team along the way. And right now, Charlotte comes in struggling offensively at 25th in the league. No matter how good they are defensively, that's going to be a real problem for them thus far. By the way, the Spurs are 26th in the league defensively, which might go back to Kawhi Leonard, might go back to the injuries. They've only played 5 games so far. They didn't play all their guys in one of them. So their sample size is weird, but it's still strange to even see them in that realm of things as one of the bad offensive teams, because the others all make sense. The others are Milwaukee, Charlotte, Orlando, Indiana, Oklahoma City with their injuries, and Philadelphia. And so all of those make sense so far, but that one does not. The good offensive teams are Dallas, Brooklyn, Toronto, Chicago, which doesn't make a lot of sense, Miami, Portland, Boston, and Utah. Boston and Utah kind of the outliers there you wouldn't necessarily suspect to be in that group. The Raptors had another good one last night, and they continued to win games, but they have not played anyone yet. So before we get all excited about Dwayne Casey's club and what they're doing, they won at 120-88 last night. They're 6-1, leading the East. Their opponents are combined 17-26. And the other story is Miami. They're 5-2. How about the fact that Miami and Minnesota both have better records than Cleveland? Kind of interesting. But Miami is 5-2. Luol Deng dropped 30 last night. Bosch had 10 rebounds, and Wade had 10 assists last night as Miami won in Dallas. So that's a huge performance for them. Warriors won against Houston, big game where Dwight Howard didn't play. Then the Warriors go and play Phoenix, and Kawhi Leonard doesn't play, and David Lee doesn't play, and they lose. So hard to take a lot out of any of those games. Isaiah Thomas had 22. Denver's 1-5. And what maybe the biggest story there is Danilo Gallinari just cannot come back from this knee injury. He is 8 of 36 for 22% shooting so far this season. We're kind of getting to, it sounds we're still in the mold of everything's early. We're going to get out of that pretty soon, though. I mean, pretty soon we're going to be 10% of the way through the season, and then pretty soon everyone's played 10, 15 games. And by, before we realize it, it's going to be further along maybe than we realize, and you begin to start taking note. I mean, the teams that start 6-1, 5-2, that's a pretty legitimate start. And it's not, other than Cleveland, the Eastern Conference is really what you'd expect. It's Toronto at 6-1, Washington at 5-2, Chicago at 5-2, and Miami at 5-2. Those were probably expected to be, along with Cleveland, the 5 best teams. Brooklyn's 4-2. Who is a team I liked, and there's no real other team that's a surprise. I suspect Atlanta will turn the corner at some point in the Eastern Conference. Over in the West, there's a little bit of a surprise because the Clippers haven't clicked in yet, but they haven't clicked in at 4. And the Sacramento's certainly a surprise. But when we started the season with the West, we thought San Antonio would be the best. Now they're 2-3, so I think you just kind of think to yourself, okay, they haven't really clicked in yet, and they have some injuries. Oklahoma City, we understand. The Clippers are 4-2. Golden State's 5-1. Memphis is 6-1. Houston's 6-1. Portland's a little bit questionable at 4-3, having only played 2 road games yet. So it's worth keeping a minor eye on where Portland stands and how they look. And it's also worth keeping an eye on Anthony Davis and what they're doing in Sacramento with DeMarcus Cousins, because both those guys are just unreal right now. Sacramento loses last night in a loss you probably think they should have won. Going into Oklahoma City, they fall. They're 5-2. DeMarcus Cousins is out of this world. That one I don't think is totally sustainable. New Orleans is 3-2, and Anthony Davis is out of this world. Out of this world. Totally out of this world. And so I think that you have to start to consider whether they might not be the real deal. Interesting game tonight. New Orleans plays in Cleveland. And that, my friends, is your NBA 5. I have a little soundbite I could play, and we could do that. Hi, I'm back. My brick wall view is over. I could even close a shade and make it so you can actually see. All right, let's talk Jazz. That's a big win last night. Not because Detroit's good, and because you don't fall behind by double digits and come back and win in the second half of basketball games very often, particularly on the road. That's probably the biggest takeaway I've got for you, is that if you take you don't win games very often that you trail by double digits in the second half and come back and win. The other one, just individual play-wise, that I think is a big deal is the fact that you get that performance from Hayward where he's kind of knocked out of the game. Detroit was doing crazy thing, just not going to let him beat you. The quote the other night by Carlisle that, this guy, and we have to stymie him. That's how coaches are viewing Gordon at this point. And so people are going to take him out of the game as much as they possibly can. Gordon's got to find a way, like he did last night, to get back in the game. I think that's the most exciting part about last night, is that instead of just calling it good and going by the waist, with a night where he just doesn't have an impact, Gordon ends up really battling and staying in the game and then being fabulous, scoring the final 11 points of the game. I thought both Cantor and Favors really played hard. Last night's a tough matchup on Canner. Those guys are bigger than he is. They're stronger than he is, and he's not particularly athletic, so that's a tough matchup. I thought he battled pretty hard, and I thought Derek did the same thing. You can go look at Drummond and Monroe's lines and be like, oh, our big guy. Nah, you know what? Those guys are mammoth, and they're going after it, and that's all they do. And I thought that our guys, battled about as well as they possibly could. Interesting thing late in both of the Cleveland is Alec Burks ends up on the ball defensively. He's not a good off-ball defender. We've talked about this a million times. But, boy, his tenaciousness and his fight when he gets put on the ball late in games, the way he was against Brandon Jennings last night and Kyrie Irving in the win over Cleveland. Kyrie Irving was a tough matchup, but that's 2 games now late in games. Now, with Exum on the floor, that allows you to do that a little bit more, and that's what we had last night. Was Exum closed the game for a foul trouble / struggling Trey Burke, and Exum at 6'6" can go guard the 2. Now, if you're at the 2's JJ Redick, that's not going to work because I don't think Exum can get through those kind of screens. So his length allows him to recover, but he's getting beat up. It's still going to be an up and down road for Dante. He was very good last night, but you can literally see him sitting courtside last night get beat up by the amount of picks he's getting hit by. And it's going to wear him down. We'll see if he's any good tonight after trying to bounce back from that. Some interesting little notes going on statistically with the Jazz right now. Gordon Hayward on the floor. We're scoring 111 points per 100 possessions. When he's off the floor, 95.4. To the next a-hole who decides they just want to rip Gordon for the sake of hating Gordon, stop reacting to it, people. The fact of the matter, if anyone's ripping Gordon at this point, they just have decided they don't like him. They just want to be on him. Because the fact is he's playing great. He's got a huge impact on the team. He's doing everything you could imagine. He's that number's striking. 111 points per 100 possessions when he's on the floor, 95.4 when he's off the floor. That's a big, huge contrasting number right there. 2 other things are happening is 2 of our bench units are beginning to play well. The bench unit, both of them actually have Hood off the floor, which is kind of a bummer. Might be something to that. The youngster just sometimes struggling, but he's out probably again tonight. I'd be surprised if they didn't have him try to run through something before he played. But nothing official on that. I just be surprised. I mean, he's in a boot and looks pretty limited. But the 4 bench guys, so that's Dante, Joe Ingles, Trevor Booker, Rudy Gobert, and Gordon Hayward lineup has been very good. And the 4 bench guys and Alec Burks have been very good. So those 2 lineups have kind of come together a little bit, giving us a solid rotation right now that is kind of successful. The only group that's not actually working well yet is the starters. The starters cannot defend. And so, it'll be interesting to see if that can change anywhere along the way. But that's, otherwise good to it. Trey is scuffling, but let's let him have some time and try to get out of it. And I think, I can see the Pandora's box opening that the minute you have Dante Exum close a game, everyone's like, all right, here we go. Okay, that was the right night. I think I said somewhere, maybe I didn't say it, maybe I only said it privately, Burns is good for Dante. Donald Sloan's a little bit of a physical beast tonight, but not, and so is Rodney Stuckey. Those could be tough, but they're not particularly good. Then in Atlanta, Jeff Teague's lightning fast, but he's not going to beat you up. And New York, it's Jose Calderon. So all 4 of those matchups should be very good for Dante. Then we get to Kyle Lowry, and you might want to be a little careful on how you use him on the 5th game in 7 nights on the road in Toronto, because I think he might scuffle a little bit in that matchup. But this is a good little stretch to stretch Dante out, because it's early in the season. Let him try new things. Let him learn new things. Quinn Snyder's asked him to do 1 new thing every night, and he seems to be doing it. His learning curve is really terrific, and I think that's part of what you're seeing in him is this development, and it's nice to see. All right, let me see what questions we have today. None? Nope, have some. Philip from Australia. He started his workday with us. He's finishing his workday with us. In the meantime, we slept. Would Quinn be wanting Alec, to a lesser degree, Trevor Booker, to be looking to pass out of some more of their drives for the corner threes, or is it just not in their makeup? Seems defenses are collapsing on them knowing they don't pass. Alec I think they're going both ways with Alec. Two things with Alec. One is I think that to your point, yes, but I think also Quinn's would like him to cut back on his turnovers. So there's a little bit of a kind of he's a little loose with some of his passing, and I think Quinn would like that to be rectified a little bit before um, it goes too far. So and you know what? Alec has actually been pretty high on secondary assists. I know that's a weird number, but last night Alec had 4 assists, a secondary assist, and a free throw assist. So he suddenly had 6 assists or directly related to 6 buckets last night. I think that's actually pretty good. So I think that he's Alec, I guess I don't know. Trevor's not a natural passer out of the post, but he's made some. He's done a good job as well on some of those mid rolls. That's really where Quinn wants it. So I'm not sure. I think either of those are big issues. The offense is currently 8th in the NBA, which is pretty high to me. I'm kind of surprised that it's that high. Last night I think combined for 32 field goals, had 20 assists. We're moving the ball. It's I think the ball movement is probably one of the least low on the issue of skills. Good question though. Aaron Hefner, thought on Alec Burks potentially coming off the bench rather than starting, and who's starting? I don't think so. I mean, I think eventually, yes. I think Alec Burks is a 6-man off the bench, right? But not right now. However, if Alec continues to shoot the three, he's hitting them 39%. Maybe that's not a fair comment. And if he continues to defend on the ball very well, and I don't mean that even as an insult. I just think he's an explosive off the bench type of scorer. Oh, Jason Lamb's giving me a research project. How many point guards were drafted to be their starter, only later to be supplemented by another and still on the original team? Where am I going? Can Trey still be the leader he wants to be, or will his ego and pride prevent him? It's a weird research project. I mean, last night Trey matched up against a number 9 pick and DJ Augustine. It's not unheard of that number 9 picks of drafts, particularly not a very good draft, end up moving along to another team or don't end up becoming your starting point guard. I mean, Trey's got things to do. He's taken 2 free throws in the last 3 games, and that would mean that if he could go to the free throw line more, which is just not as easy as I'm making it sound. Like you just don't go to the free throw. You either, you got to figure out how to do it. You got to figure out if you have the athleticism. You got to see the gaps. There's a lot to it. But if he can find a way to go to the free throw line more, then when he struggles with his shooting, it's not as big a deal as it is right now. Let's go to Ryan Dangerfield. In a small sample size, the starters so far are -10 in 69 minutes, but the starters with Booker instead of Cantor are plus 24 with 31. Could Booker potentially replace Cantor in the starting lineup, or will Quinn stick with Cantor all season? Again, okay, I love numbers, but and I think there might be something to it. But also a lot of this times, and I said this for the last 3 years and nobody wanted to believe me, but maybe now we have a different head coach, you'll actually believe me. A lot of times this is just a sign that the head coach uses his lineups correctly. If you've got a guy who's got a really good plus minus, sometimes it's, in particular, bench guy, it's really a sign that the coach is using that player with his strengths well, and when he's outmatched, he's being taken off the floor. And that the starter's burden is the fact that they just have to play everybody. So you got to understand that. Does that make sense? I mean, particularly bench guys, often the case is that the coach is using that player inside his unique skill set, and in that he somehow allows that player to be successful, and when they're not successful, he pulls them, and then the starter has to take the burden. So, if Trevor Booker starts last night against Greg Monroe, and it's probably not good. Whereas Cantor, got a lot of time last night. But the starting lineup has not defended well so far. Trevor Booker's insertion, Trevor's been very good. We're better defensively when Trevor's on the floor. He probably can get out to shooters, but he also might be, because we're also playing some of those minutes against bench units. He also might be playing against stretch fours, which he matches against. He's probably not playing against big behemoth power forwards very often. Brian O'Keefe, did you see David Thorpe's tweet about teams with a 1-point lead don't shoot a high arcing half-court shot when the difference between shot and game clock is less than 5 seconds. Cited the Jazz Detroit as an example of how to burn the clock and give up possessions. It's interesting. It's an interesting concept. Gordon takes that shot maybe a little early last night, but I think that that's actually not fair. Here's why. I don't think Gordon knows he's pulling up when he goes on that one-on-one play. I think he's trying to penetrate, and when he gets stymied, then he's got to pull up. So therefore, I'll talk to him about it and find this out. But when he breaks on that play, he's got to give himself enough time to be able to go to the rim, bring defenders to him, and kick. Now, when he penetrates and gets stymied, now he's got to take the jump shot, and there's too much time on the clock. But you've got to give yourself enough time to penetrate and possibly find somebody else or do something else with it if the defense collapses on you, if you beat your man. That would just have to be a set play that he literally waits to 1 second on the clock, throws up this high-arcing shot, tries to draw iron, long rebound, and it happens. Curious to know if that would work. Shot gets blocked, it certainly doesn't work. If you miss the rim, then the 24-second clock violation goes. I think it backs you up. That's my understanding of that one. So there's some risk in that one, but it's an interesting concept. How do you feel about Gobert playing 16 minutes per game? I think a lot of fans want to see him getting more minutes. What has to change for him to see more minutes? I think 16 minutes a game is fine. Who do they want him to see minutes instead? I mean, we always want to see the bench guys, right? Maybe we can finally understand that what's been going on for the last 3 years is just how it works, right? Now we want – so on this show today, people want more Exum, more Booker, and more Cantor. We've won 2 of our last 3. The mantra for the last 2 years is that, that, and I want these guys. Now we just want these guys. Now, right? Quinn's not an idiot. We just want these guys. Come on. There's only so many minutes to go along, people. But Rudy's still a little limited. We're not playing very well when Rudy's on the floor, by the way. I know he makes nice blocks and makes everybody excited. We're not playing very well when Rudy's on the floor. All right, that wraps it up today. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in. That is tip-off. Have a good one. 3-4 for the Jazz. Heading to Indiana, trying to see if we can get our 4th win before heading to Atlanta for a tough one, then New York, which always seems to be tough for whatever reason, and then Toronto, which will be miserable. Not the city. The city's awesome, but playing Toronto, who's won as many as they have on our 5th game in 7 nights, is going to be a tough one at the end of this trip. Have a good one. Thank you very much.